you killed my wife.
Stay on the phone.
Shit. Who the hell are you?
Look at the photograph. Do you see it?
Yeah, sure.
For no reason. You took her life.
I didn't shoot her.
The film opens in a cluttered garage, where Charles meticulously organizes spare parts for a plane, a thoughtful birthday gift from his wife, Sarah. As he immerses himself in this task, Sarah interrupts to inform him of her imminent departure for a business conference in London. She extends an invitation for him to accompany her, but Charles declines, citing the overwhelming workload that demands his attention. Later, Charles arrives at the CIA headquarters, navigating through a series of security scanners that he himself designed before settling into his work. Suddenly, he receives a message from Inqualine, a shadowy figure he's been in contact with for years. Inqualine offers valuable classified intelligence for sale but warns that the information could jeopardize the CIA's operations. When Charles speculates that the documents are located in Istanbul, Inqualine dismisses his guess, leaving Charles intrigued yet frustrated. As he delves into analyzing the material, he discovers that even his exceptional intellect cannot decipher the complex code. After a brief lunch break, Charles returns to his office and receives a call from Sarah, who informs him of her safe arrival in London. However, Charles is already aware of her whereabouts. He has been tracking her. Their conversation is brief, as Charles's urgency to unravel the mystery of the documents consumes him. Determined to crack the code, he relocates his computer to a restricted area equipped with advanced technology that promises faster results. After a lengthy struggle, he finally accesses the information contained within the documents. What he uncovers leaves him reeling. The files reveal a shocking truth. A drone strike disguised as a self-deletion bombing was authorized and subsequently covered up. News clips flash across the screen, detailing the tragic aftermath, a staggering 150 casualties, including members of French Special Forces and Danish Marines, all orchestrated by Chief Moore, Charles's own boss. That night, Charles attempts to reach out to Sarah but is met with silence. He leaves a voicemail filled with worry. The following day at the office, he is taken aback to find Moore waiting for him. Moore leads him to O'Brien's office, the newly appointed director, who delivers devastating news. A terrorist attack has struck a hotel in London, and Sarah is among the victims. In disbelief, Charles insists on calling her, but Moore turns on the television, revealing reports of chaos. A group of 4 terrorists stormed the hotel, taking hostages and killing 2. Next, Moore plays the hotel's security footage, confirming Sarah's tragic fate amidst the turmoil. Returning home, Charles is confronted by a throng of reporters seeking interviews and police officers attempting to maintain order. A friend helps him slip inside without attracting attention. The following day, Charles confronts Moore and Supervisor Caleb, filled with suspicion about the events that transpired. He grapples with the impossibility of terrorists infiltrating London's extensive security network and maneuvering through its congested streets undetected. Moore assures Charles that an investigation is underway, but Caleb insists he go home. The next day, Charles arrives at the airport to retrieve Sarah's body and her belongings. Upon opening her suitcase at home, he discovers a heartfelt gift she had chosen for him, triggering an emotional breakdown. Overwhelmed by grief and unable to remain in the house, Charles returns to work, where he utilizes a restricted computer to hack into the hotel's security cameras and nearby street footage. He meticulously constructs a timeline of the tragic events and presents his findings to his superiors. Charles learns that the 4 terrorists had stolen a vehicle in the East End before infiltrating the hotel through a service entrance, where they expertly erased all fingerprints and DNA evidence. But tensions escalated into an argument in the corridor. When one of the firm's security personnel confronted them, a terrorist opened fire, killing 1 guard and critically injuring another. Hotel security was immediately alerted, prompting a call to the police. In their desperate attempt to escape without being apprehended, the terrorists stormed a conference room and took hostages. Sarah was captured when she bravely tried to assist other attendees in fleeing. Using voice and facial recognition software, Charles identifies the terrorists: Mishka from Moscow, former South African Special Forces operative Lawrence, mercenary Horst, and ex-intelligence officer Gretchen. Noticing the lack of surprise from Caleb and Moore, Charles realizes they were already aware of this information. They inform him that they are actively working on the case and suggest he see a therapist. The following day, Charles discreetly hides a chip in his ID badge and passes through security undetected. Once in his office, he prints out classified files and employs a skimmer on the printer to create a digital copy. That night, he finds himself at a bar, fixated on a jukebox, lost in thought. The next morning, Charles confronts his superiors again, armed with the printed files. He lists Moore's illicit operations, including the bombing of a Syrian hospital and an attack on an Allied base in Yemen that resulted in thousands of civilian deaths. He threatens to expose everything to the director unless his demands are met: full CIA training, fake passports, cash, a weapon, and intel on Sarah's killers. After the meeting, Charles collapses in his car, overwhelmed by stress. In the office, Moore dismisses Charles's dead man switch as a bluff. However, Caleb points out that they cannot take that risk. They decide to investigate the trigger mechanism, and if it proves to be a bluff, they can orchestrate a lethal accident during training. Meanwhile, Caleb and his team scramble to understand how Charles managed to copy the confidential files without detection. They deliberate over the possibility of a skimmer, which wouldn't function on their secured computers but could be utilized on a printer. Charles might have sent the files to the printer and employed a magnetic strip to extract the data. Upon reviewing security footage, they confirm that Charles purchased a magnetic strip at a local store, yet they remain puzzled about how he managed to bring it in and out of the building undetected. The team also investigates Charles's home and uncovers that he frequented a particular bar twice. They decide to search the bar and discover an ABBA CD hidden beneath the jukebox. Caleb selects that CD from the jukebox catalog, but only static fills the air, leading them to remove the CD that Charles had left behind. Meanwhile, Charles arrives at a CIA training facility, greeted by Colonel Henderson. They begin their training at the shooting range. However, Charles struggles with his aim, needing to be alarmingly close to hit the target accurately. In stark contrast, when tasked with bomb making, he demonstrates remarkable speed and skill, impressing Henderson significantly. Next, Charles must adapt to his new identity, leading Henderson to put him through a grueling exercise where he is physically harassed to ensure he can recite his new information under pressure. Once that is complete, they finalize his new passports. That evening, Henderson visits Charles's room and tells him that he isn't a killer. However, Charles adamantly asserts his desire for justice. In a tense moment, Henderson pulls out a gun and hands it to Charles, instructing him to aim at his chest. Overwhelmed with anxiety, Charles's hands tremble uncontrollably, and he ultimately lowers the weapon. Back at the office, the agents spend hours decrypting the information on the CD until they realize that Charles had been bluffing about the dead man's switch. They promptly inform their superiors, unaware that Charles is secretly eavesdropping on them. It becomes clear that the chip he embedded in his ID badge was actually a bug planted on the files he provided to his bosses. Moore quickly contacts Henderson, instructing him to apprehend Charles. However, by this time, Charles has already made his escape. After hanging up, Moore discovers the bug on the files and directly confronts Charles, accusing him of treason. In response, Charles discards his earpiece before boarding a plane. Upon arriving in London, Charles clears customs and begins his journey to Paris. His fake passport triggers alerts within CIA systems, prompting Moore to send Henderson after him. In Paris, Charles secures a hotel room near a restaurant frequently visited by Gretchen. Eventually, she appears within close proximity, allowing him to start tracking her phone. He spends the day outside her building, patiently waiting for her to leave. When a tenant exits, he seizes the opportunity to slip inside the building undetected. Following an online guide, he successfully picks the lock to Gretchen's apartment and begins searching for valuable information. He snaps photos of her schedule and discovers a gun tucked away in a drawer, deciding to keep it for himself. Just then, his tracker alerts him that Gretchen is returning, prompting him to hurriedly retreat to the stairs and wait for her arrival. However, when she finally arrives home, he finds himself unable to pull the trigger. Overcome with disappointment, he rushes back to the hotel, pretending that Sarah is waiting for him. Once he calms his racing thoughts, he examines the photos he took and discovers that Gretchen has been frequenting the hospital. A deeper dive into her health records reveals that she suffers from allergies. The next morning, Charles buys an abundance of flowers, then settles at a cafe, patiently waiting until he spots Gretchen and follows her to the hospital. Inside the hospital, Gretchen is undergoing tests when the doctor notices a malfunction with the computer screen and steps out to seek assistance. Seizing the moment, Charles dons a doctor's coat and enters the room, locking Gretchen inside a machine. Panic sets in for her as Charles disregards her fear and begins to fill the chamber with pollen. The commotion draws the attention of the doctor and a nurse. As Gretchen's breathing becomes labored due to her allergies, Charles demands information about Horst, the man who shot Sarah, offering to help her in return. Struggling to speak through her allergic reaction, Gretchen's silence prompts him to open the chamber. In a sudden burst of adrenaline, she pushes him against a desk, igniting a fierce struggle that sends them crashing into furniture around the room. In the chaos, Charles draws his gun, but Gretchen overpowers him and escapes through the door. Desperately, he chases her into the street, but just as he prepares to shoot, she is struck by a car. Horrified by the scene before him, Charles steels himself to approach her lifeless body and snatches her phone before fleeing and discarding his lab coat in a nearby trash bin. Back at the hotel, he scrubs away the blood and hastily packs his belongings. That night, he heads to the bus station and purchases a ticket to Marseille. News of Gretchen's death soon reaches the CIA. Samantha presses for details, and Charles can only reveal that it appears she was killed by one of their own. That evening, consumed by guilt over her death, Charles seeks solace in a bar, drinking heavily to numb his feelings. In his intoxicated state, he believes he sees Sarah dancing, only to realize it's merely a woman who resembles her. His heart races when he spots Henderson approaching. Panic sets in as he shoves past patrons to escape the bar and darts through the streets until he finds refuge in another establishment. But Henderson tracks him down there as well. With no windows in the bathroom to hide in, Charlie has no choice but to confront him. He reluctantly joins Henderson at the bar, where he learns that Henderson located him by tracking Gretchen's phone. After a brief exchange, Charles reveals a timer on his phone and bolts just before a bomb detonates in the bathroom. Chaos erupts within the bar as patrons scramble for safety, allowing Charles to slip away unnoticed. Even the tracker on his phone goes dark. The following morning, Charles reaches out to the Inqualine for assistance and boards a cargo plane bound for Turkey. Upon arriving in Istanbul, he attempts to approach a contact but is blocked by a woman who instructs him to check his phone. After leaving the restaurant, Charles is approached once more by the woman, who reveals herself to be Inqualine. She is already aware of his wife's situation and instructs him to conceal his hat and backpack in a shopping bag to avoid drawing attention. Inqualine suggests that he pretend to shop for a while before they meet again at a garage. Moments later, they reunite, and she drives him to her home. During the ride, Inqualine shares her poignant backstory. She became a hacker 6 years ago following the death of her husband, a CIA asset who had ties to Russian intelligence. He was the original Inqualine and imparted his knowledge to her. Officially, his death was ruled an accident. He supposedly fell from a window. Upon arriving at her residence, Inqualine confides that this is the longest she has ever stayed in one place, over 3 years, and admits she is weary of constantly being on the run. She reveals a grim contingency plan. If the Russians ever come for her, she possesses a gun to end her own life. They then turn their focus to the case at hand. Inqualine explains that Horst is the mastermind behind hiring mercenaries, while Lawrence serves as an arms dealer. Eager to assist, she offers to go undercover as an arms seller to make contact with him. They also discuss Mishka, who travels often and shares his whereabouts online. As they scrutinize photographs, they identify a woman accompanying him. Using facial recognition technology, they trace her to her Instagram account and confirm she is currently in Spain. The next day, Caleb instructs his team to monitor terrorist activities in hopes of locating Charles. Samantha meets with Moore, expressing her desire for him to cease conducting black ops without her approval. Moore retorts that he received the same admonition from her predecessor and reiterates his unwavering support for his operations. After their meeting, Samantha into her car, where her assistant presents her with a photo of Henderson in Spain, confirming that Moore sent him. Samantha promptly dispatches one of her agents after him. Meanwhile, Charles and Inqualine utilize their hacking skills to access hotel security cameras in order to locate Mishka. Charles then travels to Madrid and checks into the same hotel. He discovers that Mishka enjoys swimming in the pool that connects two buildings via their rooftops. Unbeknownst to Charles, Henderson is also tracking him in the vicinity. The following day, Charles begins constructing a device designed to capture Mishka and conceals it within the hotel. Later, he follows Mishka to a bar, oblivious to Henderson's presence in the lobby. While at the bar, Charles spots a man who looks familiar and realizes he is being followed. He discreetly informs Inqualine through his earpiece. She quickly scans the man's face and identifies him as a CIA agent. Spotting Henderson on camera as well, she urges Charles to abort the mission, but he insists on sticking to their plan. When Mishka heads to the pool, Charles confronts him, demanding information about Horst's whereabouts. He threatens that if Mishka doesn't cooperate, he will destroy the pool. Dismissing Charles's threat, Mishka swims away, prompting Charles to activate his device. The glass begins to crack ominously. In a panic, Mishka swims frantically, but it's too late. The glass shatters, and he plummets to his death as water rushes out onto the street below. Inqualine urgently alerts Charles that Henderson and another agent are closing in on him, providing precise directions for his escape. A tense chase ensues, with Henderson nearly capturing Charles, only to be interrupted by the other agent who launches a surprise attack. The two men grapple fiercely in the cramped confines of the laundry room, with Charles watching as they hurl each other against the walls. In a brutal moment, Henderson forces the man's head into a washing machine. Just as the situation escalates, the agent manages to draw a gun and fires at Henderson, but in a swift turn of events, Henderson seizes the weapon and retaliates with deadly precision. Charles hesitates, torn between intervening and fleeing, but Inqualine's voice in his earpiece urges him to prioritize his safety. The following day, Samantha summons Moore to her office, inquiring about Charles's whereabouts. Moore informs her that Charles is on bereavement leave, but before he departs, Samantha reveals that she has obtained footage from the hotel. Meanwhile, Caleb and his team analyze the same footage and quickly deduce that Charles had outside assistance. They sift through his encrypted chats and uncover messages from Inqualine. After an exhaustive search, they identify the file of the deceased agent known as Inqualine and infer that his wife has taken up his mantle. That night, Charles and Inqualine find solace in each other's company, deciding to sleep side by side for comfort. However, their peace is shattered when Inqualine's birds screech in alarm, alerting them to the approach of agents on the security cameras. Without hesitation, they dash through a concealed tunnel within the wall. As they escape, Charles spots a drone hovering ominously above them. They manage to slip into another building, evading capture just moments before agents storm into Inqualine's home. With the computer erasing all files behind them, they flee down the beach toward Inqualine's car, but their escape is compromised when the drone spots them. Agents pursue them relentlessly, firing shots as they follow in a boat. After a harrowing chase, the agents manage to inflict enough damage on the car to bring it to a halt, leaving Inqualine gravely injured. Faced with no other option, Charles shifts her body to the passenger's seat and takes control of the wheel, determined to drive until he can shake off their pursuers. Later, he leaves the car in a garage and shares a bittersweet farewell kiss with Inqualine. The next day, Charles contacts Lawrence under the guise of an arms dealer to arrange a meeting. He then acquires new electronics and travels to Romania. In an abandoned building, he records his own face and hacks into a security feed in Berlin, tricking the CIA into believing he is there. When Lawrence finally arrives at the designated location, he finds a ringing phone on an empty chair. Charles instructs him to look inside a box, where Lawrence discovers an array of bombs rigged to detonate if disturbed. As he processes this shocking revelation, he notices a photograph of Sarah nestled among the explosives. At that moment, Charles appears behind him, demanding Horst's location and promising to deactivate the bombs if Lawrence complies. Lawrence reveals that Horst operates within Russian waters and typically receives shipments at a Baltic seaport. When Charles presses for contact details, Lawrence explains that communication occurs solely through secret codes sent by Horst's men. Charles's heart raced as he tossed his phone to the ground, the device containing all the crucial numbers and names he needed. After hastily retrieving it, he left the room, only to be jolted by the sound of explosions that claimed Lawrence's life in the adjacent space. News of Lawrence's death soon reached the CIA in Romania, who were left reeling as they realized they had been misled by fake footage. Later, in a Russian hotel room, Charles found himself lost in thought, imagining Sarah by his side as he opened a carefully wrapped gift. Inside, he discovered a puzzle that he pieced together swiftly, revealing a heartfelt message from his beloved wife. The next morning, he ventured to the port and noticed a suspicious vehicle parked nearby. Without hesitation, he sent a coded message to Horst's men and observed a man by the car checking his phone. Intrigued, Charles followed him discreetly, snapping photos of the boat before retreating. After purchasing some essential tools, Charles returned to his hotel and tracked down the yacht associated with the boat using its registration number. He meticulously studied the potential sea routes Horst might take. The following morning, as he approached the boat, an unseen assailant knocked him out from behind, causing Sarah's cherished puzzle to slip from his grasp. When Charles regained consciousness, he found himself aboard the yacht, face to face with Horst, who had discovered the bomb Charles had previously planted. Horst observed that Charles had orchestrated the deaths of others indirectly and doubted his capacity for direct confrontation. He handed Charles a gun, demanding that he pull the trigger, but Charles hesitated, unable to go through with it and ultimately placed the weapon down. Suddenly, the yacht began veering off course, throwing the crew into a state of panic. In a surprising twist, Charles revealed that he had taken control of the vessel, which was under CIA administration. Having worked on the protocols that protected this yacht, he easily hacked into its systems and redirected it toward Finland. Within moments, the yacht was surrounded by the Finnish Navy and Interpol, who swiftly arrested Horst and his accomplices. In the aftermath, Samantha held a press conference announcing the arrest of all corrupt agents who had exploited CIA resources for illicit purposes. As Charles absorbed the weight of these events, Henderson approached him, expressing pride in his accomplishments. After paying a visit to Sarah's grave to pay his respects, Charles finally returned home and took to the skies for a long-awaited plane ride, embracing a newfound sense of freedom and closure. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.